Hello, friends. This is Odds 100% real, JK. But, anyways, we're explaining the full World Offenders tier list. Yeah, starting off with top 10. Set is top 10 because, well, simply a strong tower, AoE, chip, high damage. What more could you need? Medusa stuns enemies for 10 seconds. The only tower to do it. Absolutely strong. Mutant Indo does damage, has poison effect, and boost towers, which is more than Orc Tower. Obviously, and 1.3 instead of 1.25. So yeah. Next is Splatoon, which is obvious why. 75k DPS without any boosts. 5 limit. Well, that's with all 5. Next is Golden Dragon. Golden Dragon's just a super cost efficient tower. That's it. Pandora. Basically the same thing. But instead of the early game tower. Cyclops, super strong early game. Wait. Let me make sure there's 10 towers in there. Okay, there is. Galactic Emperor, highest base damage in the entire game. He's actually very cost efficient. Pretty good tower overall. Next is Dark Knight. Just full AoE. He's supposed to have 100 range, but never got that fixed. He was supposed to get reworked, but never ended up happening. Just a strong late game, mid to late game tower. Full AoE range. Pretty good. Next is Hydra. Hydra is just really strong. Sometimes. He truly is an F tier tower though. But anyways, ignoring that. Hydra's is a strong tower. Next, we're gonna go to S tier. Galactic Goddess. Galactic Goddess has a really good tier 1. Her Shark Tower is decent, I guess, but she's pretty good. Next is Soar, or the ape, or monkey, or gorilla, or whatever you want to call him. Soar is really good late game. It's 12.5k DPS, pretty cost efficient. Yeah, just a decent mid to late game tower. Next is Alien Beast, which is a early to mid game tower. Really good track tower. Basically, you would use it instead of Cyclops in some maps, because that's how good he was. Next is, Bunny Blaster. Bunny Blaster is, a good early to mid game tower. Cost efficient, bad, huge downside, major lag. Next is, Orc Tower. Orc Tower is, well, just a boosting tower. Basically, if you didn't get Mutant Indo, this is basically your go-to, unless someone else has Mutant Indo. Pretty strong, super cheap, 1.25 boost. Pretty good tower. Next is Angel Reaper. Angel Reaper was, a tower from the, 2 months ago on Infinite mode. it's basically like Hydra and Galactic Emperor, but the worst out of all of them, sadly. Pretty much just decent late game DPS. He he's unique as he does 2 attacks, although it does half the damage, so like it's just animation, I guess. But next is Shadow Colossus. Shadow Colossus is basically Galactic Dragon but better. That's it. Just a great early to mid game tower. Same thing with Galactic Dragon. Moneybags. Moneybags is basically a Duos Citruos tower. Basically he gives money to every player on the match. Really good. In solos, he has a decent tier 3 where it's like about 31k for in total for that upgrade for 10k cash per wave. 2 limit, pretty good tower though for duos and trios. Solos, mid. Galactic Knight. Galactic Knight is a decent mid to late game track tower, but the obvious downside is multi-lane maps, slow spawn time, track tower. Next is Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw is a decent late game option. Pretty much you would get it if your luck with crates is absolutely horrendous. That's about it. Next is the Mutant Spider. Mutant Spider is a mid to late game tower that is like Galactic Goddess basically, but way worse. Its levels are pretty mid. It starts off with summoning its spider on like Goddess, where she gets tier 3. It's just a decent late game tower. Next is Fire Genie. Fire Genie is basically a reskin of the Genie Tower. I cannot find that tower for some reason. Oh, there he is. That. He came with the most controversial update, which was removing all 1 to 4 tiers design for max or some towers. I think it's like 1. I'm not sure which one though. But anyways. Yeah. Just a decent early to mid game tower. It has a fire effect, which is nice. It does stack. I think when they made what's his name, Schemeth, I don't know how to pronounce it, the cat god from the Gods Collide event stack, I think it made every single effect tower stack. Next is Bunny Bomber. Bunny Bomber is a decent mid to late game track tower. That's a decent mid to late game tower. Next is Volcane Rex. Volcane Rex is just an early mid game tower. Or late actually. Mid to late. No, not mid to late. Early to mid late. I can't speak. Pretty decent. Also, we're not gonna talk about guns. Maybe. Just not yet. Next is King's Treasure. King's Treasure is just a good solo money tower, but it's only good for like Shadow Realm. That's it. Next is Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack is a cost efficient early to mid game tower. His best level is level 5 because it's cheap and it's 7.5k DPS. Next is Arc Beast. Arc Beast is a decent late game tower, huge range, kind of cheap, but his early levels suck ass. Next is Zombie Rex. Zombie Rex got a buff, whereas DPS is 9k now. Still no poison effect, sadly. Now it's just a decent tower. Free limit. I'm not sure about the rest of his levels, because I don't own him at all. But I just know he does 9k DPS on max now. Next is Reptice. Reptice is a strong, slow hitting tower. He also has an effect like Volcane, Frostburn. It's the same damage but lasts longer because of his slow fire rate of 5 seconds. Volcane lasts 5 seconds. This one's 8 or 7 seconds, I forgot. Yeah, it's a decent late game tower. It did used to have a massive con that Shadowclaw also used to have, where it was just too big. Next is Galactic God. Galactic God is a mid to late cost efficient tower that also boosts. So you couldn't use Orc Tower, Mita Indo, or Dino Hunter with this guy, or else he would just take their boost. Yeah, he's just a good cost efficient unit. Hercules. Hercules is a pretty good early to mid game tower. Yeah, that's it. He's just good. Just Nutcracker, but better. Next is Night Prowler. Night Prowler is a pretty good mid to late game tower. He's just outdated, but he's super cheap too. Next is Cobra King. Cobra King is a good early to mid game tower. Not that great for late game, but he is the fastest spawning track tower, with him spawning every 10 seconds on tiers 1 to 2, and then 3 to 4, it's 8 seconds. Yeah, pretty good tower. Next is Rambo or Zeus. They're tight, I guess. Like, they're okay. Mid to late game options. Rambo has more range on max. Same DPS. Yeah. We're just gonna move on to Snowball Dragon. This guy is basically Night Prowler, but a little more damage, but costs a lot more. So, yeah, unfortunately, less cost efficient for like 10% more DPS. Not worth the 100 Robux. Next is Schemic. Just his poison stacks, which is with every effect tower, I believe. Pretty cheap. Damage isn't the best, but his poison lasts forever, and it does decent damage. Pair this guy with Medusa. Boy, that poison damage will add up. Orochi, I think that's how you pronounce it. Just a super, super cheap, late game tower, mid to late game tower. Um, Unfortunately, it is a bit disappointing how the 3% ends up being worse than the second most common store. Next is Cerberus or Cerberus or however you want to pronounce it. Pretty much a really good, not really good, but good, decent early to mid game tower. Next is Phoenix. Phoenix is not that great, but it's decent, I guess. Sometimes. I don't know, it just doesn't feel good. Next is Snow Owl. Snow Owl is basically Anubis, better. A bit better. It's still horrendous. Next is Ra. Ra is just a decent early game tower. Next is Astro Army. A decent early game tower. Still want that buff. Still want a buff for him. Next is Spider Lady. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Jorogummo. I don't remember the last word is. Basically, it shows Alien Beast, but way worse. Take everything good about Alien Beast, yeah, and just make it worse. Next is Skeleton Beast. Skeleton Beast is a really good, well, decent now, but good, decent, early to mid game tower. He has really high range, but low damage. Next is Snow Beast. Snow Beast is just it's basically the same stats as Nutcracker till like level 3 or 4, I think. Tier 4 is absolutely horrendous, but he does have a 6 limit and has a pretty decent tier 3. Next is Slitter. Slitter is a decent late game, mid to late game tower. I don't own it though, so yeah, I can't remember much about it, but all I remember is that it's a pretty decent mid to late game tower. Next is Nutcracker. Nutcracker was really, really strong, and it's still really strong. Basically, it's just really, it's just a cost efficient early to mid game tower. His tier 4 was only like 60,000 or something. I don't remember. No, it's not 60,000. It was about 90,000, I think. I'm not sure. For 1.8k DPS, which made Shadow Realm actually possible, which at the time, Shadow Realm did get nerfed, but he did release and made Shadow Realm super easy. Next is Demon King. Demon King is a decent mid-game tower. That's it. Bunny Ranger, a decent mid to late game tower. Next is Santa Toy, which is a decent late game tower. Next is Pumpkin Gunner. I don't have his stats, so I'm not sure. But all I remember is that he's an early to mid game tower. Next is Anubis. Anubis is pretty much an early game tower. Um, he does his job terribly, just kidding. He's just decent. Next is Fred the Alien, which used to be known as one of the best towers. Even though he was more like, I don't know, he wasn't that insane back when they buffed him. It was just that it was super cheap to max him. Boom. Now Freddy's just a super cheap mid to late game tower. Next is Electric Fence. Electric Fence is basically a selling and replacing tower like Snow Patrol. Basically what you do to bosses is just place the fence on the boss and upgrade it to max. Then sell it, repeat. Next is Sobek, or the Crocodile from the Gods Collide event. Basically a straight line AoE. That's it. It's decent, I guess. Next is War God. War God is a decent tower, I guess. He's pretty much just the gods, but better. Sacrifice gods. That's it. Next is the, Dino Hunter. Dino Hunter is a boosting tower that only increases damage by 15%. It's fine. Next is Dragon God. Dragon God basically only has 2 good levels, max and level 1. Level 1 is 50k for 1k DPS, I'm pretty sure. And max is 10k. It's decent. Should get buffed though, because, well, all the Egypt towers should get buffed, because second worst crate, not looking good for 600 gem crate though. But next is Mecha Robot. Mecha Robot is basically not cost efficient, but decent damage. His tier 4 is absolutely horrendous as it lowers his DPS but gives him more range. I don't know who is cooking, but okay. Next is Gargantuan God. Gargantuan God is decent, but he's just a bad dude. 25k DPS with all 5. Yeah. That's more than one Hydra. That's more than one Hydra. But it costs a lot more, I'm pretty sure. Next is Quantum Enforcer. Quantum Enforcer is basically just the sentry gun or turret gun or I don't know. It has a 10 fire rate, decent DPS, terrible range though. Never gets increased. Pumpkin Cannon, 10 limit, and basically has a global range. Decent DPS. Next is Squid Doll. She's basically the gods but better. I don't know why a doll is better than a god, but oh well. Next is the Sphinx farm, which I guess it's decent. Next is Genie. Genie is an okay early to mid game tower. Next is the Dracula, an okay mid-game tower. Next is Abominable Snowman, which is pretty much only an early game tower. Next is the Sacrifice Gods. Lake God is obviously above 1. But, well, not above Abominable. But it's a decent late game tower, mid to late game. It's okay. Next is Indo. Not counting the bugs, so Indo is pretty terrible. Next is Inferno. I'm not explaining fully. I don't know why, but Indo has a 7 limit, decent DPS. No, DPS is mid. He has really good HP though. Inferno has a fast spawn rate and decent HP. For its time, this thing is actually really good. Next is Martial Tiger. I guess it's just a decent mid game tower, but I don't know. It's just not that great, honestly. Santa's Dragon, an okay or mid tower. Coffin Cruiser, a mid tower. Decent HP. Not that good DPS. Terrible range. Next is Roboraptor. Roboraptor is just a fast spawning track tower. Mid game tower. It's super cheap. But yeah, track tower. It's alright. Sentry Gun. Sentry Gun is a decent mid to late, just mid game. It's decent. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Quantum Enforcer and Sentry Gun have a 6 limit. Next is Snow Patrol, which has 70k DPS on max. No, not 70k DPS. 7k DPS or 70k damage with the he has a super slow fire rate with it being 10 seconds, which could be terrible because it could hit like a fast, slow enemy. Not slow, low HP enemy. That's just its massive con. So it's pretty much only usable in like infinite mode, basically. Or on the boss wave, as I said with Electric Fence. Next is Golden God. Golden God is an okay early to mid game tower, but it's meh. 5 limit. Free limit on Dracor. Just the cheapest tower in the game. Just it's decent. Good, decent early game tower. Next, Hades Soul. Hades Soul is a weird track tower It used to be more unique for real. But anyways, Hey Soul is just mid. Not that great HP, but it is super cheap. So yeah. Next is Reindeer Dragon. Reindeer Dragon is a free tower that was gifted on December 25th, and it does decent DPS despite being free. It's like Night Prowler and Snowball Dragon, except way worse. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's more expensive than those two. Next is Frozen Mammoth. Frozen Mammoth is a fast spawning high HP track tower, or was for the time high HP. It's decent health now. The cost is kind of cheap too. Well, 7 limit. Next is Pumpkin Riders. Pumpkin Riders is a mid to late game tower. Pretty sure they have the same amount of, I think, 5k less HP than Spectral Rider, which is 70k now. 70k? So, 70k HP. Kind of cheap. But high spawn time with it being 35 seconds, I believe. And for some reason on tier 3 or 4, it goes up to 40 seconds for no reason. Next is Piggy Bank. Gives money every 2 waves. Like, it's okay. It's just not that great. Next is Cyber Scorpion. A super cheap, really good for starters tower. It's fine. Next is Cyber Panther. Cyber Panther is a mid early game. I'm not early game, mid late game tower actually. It's just mid. Next is Bunner Gunner. Bunner Gunner is just mid. It's decent. I guess it's decent in cost and DPS, but that's about it. Next is Frankenstein, which is a mid tower that is only late game. It's not very cost efficient, but I guess it's fine. Wait, where am I? Oh, whoops. Next is Pumpkin Pirate. Pumpkin Pirate is an early game tower only. It's fine at its job. The only problem is its very slow fire rate. It used to have a 2 fire rate before, but then they fixed it. That was back when the change with towers, when they made it so like 2 means it attacks 2 times a second. Nah, I'm not sure why Pumpkin Pirate was infected. Probably forgot it was a tower, to be honest. Because who even remembers this thing? It was really good, but... And they nerfed it to the thing we know now, which is... Early... It's mid-game... Early game tower, I mean. Not early mid. Next is Rambo Rudolph. Rambo Rudolph is... a mid... to bad... late game tower. It's not cost efficient, decent fire, pretty good fire rate, free limit, but yeah, it's just not good. Next is Mecha Santa. This is basically a late game track tower. I don't have it, so I can't really talk about it because I don't know much about it. I don't know its cost. I don't know anything about it. Next is Dragon Cannon. Dragon Cannon is super cheap, but low DPS. And um I don't remember the range, but I think it's like mid. Next is Giant Cyclops, which is a bad um late game tower. And actually, fun fact, for some reason the devs decided to do a little funny and make pumpkin cannon you see here better than Giant Cyclops, despite Giant Cyclops being one, he costed more Robux. Two was a was a higher chance to get in the crate in 2021, and yet Pumpkin Cannon is better despite being easier to get and cheaper to get. I have no idea what the devs did that. Next is Spectral Rider. Spectral Rider is a late game track tower that is not very good. Um it's not cheap. It's just not very good. Next is Dragon King, which is not cost efficient, not really good DPS, and its range is decent, I guess, but it's just not that great. Next is Electro. Uh, Electro is just a very bad tower. Um, like it's not really good at being a mid-game tower. Next is Visit Center, basically the starter farm tower, which you shouldn't be using farms. But anyways, I guess it's fine, but not that great. Next is Satellite, bad tower, and it should have been one of the rarest towers, but the devs thought funny. It was originally obtained by defeating mutants, the old one from 2021, 5 times, which at the time was really hard. But then, after mutants ended, they decided to do a flash sale and make it Robux. Devs just hate us at this point. Then, when the Gods update came out, they decided to put it in the recruit crate. Like, that's fucking stupid. Next is Santa. Super Santa. A bad late game tower. It is super cheap, but pretty bad. He did get a buff technically, since they did increase his fire rate, but lower his damage, of course, because, well, I guess they just wanted to make it make sense instead of having a 5-1 fire rate for the whole time. Next is Pirate Ship, which should be getting a buff when the Pirates Plunder event comes out. But for now, it's just a bad mid to late game tower. Next is Tiny Turtle, which I probably should have put lower. It's just a terrible mid-game tower. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. 10 limit, very low DPS, etc. Next is Ninja Girl. Ninja Girl is a terrible late game track tower. 5 limit, kinda cheap, not really. Next is Triceratops tank, which has a decent tier 1, but for some reason Max has a 60 spawn time despite having 50 HP or something. Or 70k, I forgot. It is kind of cheap though, so good. Next is Aqua Shark. Aqua Shark is a terrible mid game tower. Next is Undead Dragon, which is a terrible late game tower. And when the devs when PvP came out, they called it the best tower. Next is Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon is terrible. It's not really good for mid game, which is what's best for. So yeah, that's not that good. It is cheap though. Next is T-Rex, which is a terrible mid game tower. It is cheap, luckily, so yeah. Crazy Goblin, super high range, super low DPS, but super cheap. But who cares about range? Next is Haunted Knight, which is a track tower. Basically, only has really a good level 1. Rest of the levels are just absolutely horrendous. Next is Hero Ship. Hero Ship is a terrible mid to late game tower. It's just only a better version of Helicopter, slightly better. Next is Helicopter. Helicopter is just terrible mid to late game tower. Next is Froth. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he is a terrible tower. 1, he misses 99.9% of his shots. Be lucky if he even hits an enemy. It's just as bad as Set sometimes. But unlike Froth, Set is top 10 because he doesn't miss as badly. Because at least he doesn't miss the slow ass enemies. But this guy misses every enemy. Next is Lovezilla. Terrible mid to late game tower. Ice Dragon. Terrible mid to late game tower. Airstrike. The best tower in the game. Solo Zeus Nightmare. And the Oni Sync Drum map, obviously. But ignoring the joke, Airstrike is terrible, absolutely horrendous. Just like the other bomber tower, which we'll talk about soon. Next is Super Defender, just a terrible mid-game tower. It is cheap, but DP is low. Next is Javelin Knight, which is super uncost efficient. Terrible late game tower. Next is Little Lizard, which is a terrible mid game tower. It is cheap, but HP is terrible. Next is another terrible mid game towers. I realize most of these are mid game. Christmas Chimney. Not good at all. Most of these are cheap, which is good. I think the range of some of these are decent. But yeah. Next is Crazy Clown. Crazy Clown is a terrible track tower. It is super cheap, of course. Next is Santa's Sleigh, which is a terrible, terrible air bomber late game tower. Basically, how an air bomber tower works is that they're like a track tower, but they don't take damage. Instead, they just drop bombs, dealing AoE. Cost a lot, low damage. Just pretty bad now. Next is Sniper. Sniper is a terrible early game tower. Next, Diamond Defender is another terrible early game tower. Next is Tactical Tank. Tactical Tank is just, well, a terrible mid-game tower, and it isn't even cheap. Polar Pair. Polar Pair is a terrible Christmas tower. It's cheap, decent DPS, but it's terrible. Alright, we're near the end. Lucky Leprechaun. Super cheap, but terrible DPS. Village Hunter. Cheap, but terrible DPS. Dragon Ram. A lot of HP, but terrible spawn rate. Skeleton Army. Horrendous early game. Mage. Horrendous early game. Squid Soldiers. Horrendous track towers. Eggheads. Horrendous early game. Super Soldier. Horrendous mid to late game. It is cheap, but most of these are cheap. All of these except for Cyber. Orb, terrible mid-game tower. Horrendous late game Cyber is. Mega Dragon. Absolutely horrendous cost efficiency. Scientist, horrendous early game. Red Orc has no good levels. Robosaurus, absolutely horrendous. Cyber Ninja, absolutely horrendous. Super Dog, horrendous. Dino Tamer, horrendous. Jeep, horrendous. Flame Turret, trash, garbage. Wrestler, second worst tower. And then the last tower, Motar. Alright, that's my World Defender CLS. Hope you all enjoyed watching this video. Long ass video, for real.